Should you start a business with your friend or go solo? That is the topic for today's episode on
Beyond the Signs Podcast. Welcome back, y'all.
Welcome back. So when we were coming up with this topic to talk about, I said it'd be pretty interesting to talk about it just because the amount of businesses I've started out with friends that either went sour or it was good, but we ended it for other reasons, or just did solo stuff.
Turned into a solo project, yeah.
Exactly. So, but before that, I want to know what your opinion is.
You said, so before we started filming, Omar told me he has two different perspectives on this topic. I actually really agree with you because I think I also have two different perspectives on this topic. I've had a really terrible experience, and then I've also had a really good experience. My good experience is this podcast. My negative experience has to do with my photography business. Now, I've been managing and doing everything myself for this photography business since I was like 16, 17, when I really started to take it seriously, which I think I've talked about this in a previous episode. It was after I went to a camp at UCLA, like a summer camp for photography, and learned so much and got so inspired that I decided to pick it up even more seriously than I had already been doing it. When I went into college, I ended up letting a friend try to help me grow my business. And that person kind of just like took it over. And it became a very toxic thing for me. And it became something I didn't even enjoy doing because I just felt like it wasn't me that it was coming from. And like creatively, I felt like it wasn't me. And at the end of the day, I'm still the one taking the pictures. I'm still the one managing and running the business. And that was really triggering for me to experience a situation in where like I didn't feel like I had control over my own, everything that I had built for myself in my photography business and in ocean salts. And it started to develop this like really toxic relationship with social media for me, where I was being told by this person if I did not post for 3 or 4 days that like I was falling off, that I wasn't going to succeed in this industry or this business, that I wasn't going anywhere and that I wasn't working hard enough. And it was this very toxic mentality of like too much hustling and not enough work-life balance, as we've talked about so much on this podcast. And that really taught me a lot of valuable lessons, so much so that I really don't regret it. But I had to go through that to learn now to not give my businesses and my energy to people who were just going to take advantage of it and go about it in a very selfish way for themselves. And that's the difference in like, I knew from the very, very beginning in starting this podcast with you that like this was going to be a very, first of all, in my personal opinion, I think it's like easier to deal with like a guy versus a girl, because I've had so many experiences where I try to bring up problems in a very diplomatic way, but the other person ends up taking it really seriously and really harsh, and it ends up just becoming this like blowout. With you and I feel like we can talk and I can actually express how I'm feeling and you can express how you're feeling, and it's like a safe space for both of us to just kind of like be able to like continue in a really efficient way. And that's like obviously part of the reason why we've seen this growth.
Right. And I mean, like we've seen our ups and downs with this.
That's exactly
venture,
what I'm saying. But like it's different because we can actually communicate with it and have open communication, have that like vulnerability, and also have like that understanding towards each other that like we're not just like these like, you know, we're still friends at the end of the day. So it's not like, yes, the business aspect is separate, but it's not like we turn off our like human emotion and like empathy once we get into business mode. Like, no, that stuff still follows us into the business. So being able to like still like understand each other and realize that we're also dealing with like another human and not just someone that we're in business with, it helps. It helps us conduct it like in a much better way.
No, absolutely. It's actually very funny because like when I started my studio production company, it was with a friend at first, right? And the reason why I went into business with him was because one, I was more of the creator slash like innovator, while he was more of the managerial side and like very
I felt the
heavy.
Same way about my experience.
Yeah, very heavy on that. So I was like, all right, you can deal with that while I deal with this. So that way I'm not like, and keep in mind, this happened twice with two different people for the same studio, right? And it only took, okay, so it was like a month into it where like this person like, keep in mind, I'm still friends with him and we've agreed that we're not good with each other when it comes to business and money. That's nothing like we've already established that. But while we were going through it, right, the first month after I was doing a couple of things and then he saw like I was doing these things, doing these events, he was like, oh, why don't I just get a camera so I can like help you out as like a second shooter? And I explicitly told him like, if you're going to get a camera, it's your responsibility. Like it can't be part of the business because it's just, I don't necessarily need it, but if you want to like go into, because at the time we weren't even making that much money. It was more or less like gigs here and there. So it wasn't like to the point where like, oh, you can go out and like buy these equipments, right? So when he bought it, right, it didn't take him 2 weeks later for him. We got into an argument because it was all about like, I'll still remember this because it was like the funniest thing. It was literally over when you open a bank account, and I didn't want to go because it was Saturday night and I already had plans that day. And he was like, no, we need to open a business account. I'm like, but bro, like you don't need to open a business account now, especially because the banks are closed. And then he just got pissed. He's like, come pick up your camera. I'm like, what camera? He's like, the one that I bought. I'm like, dude, I didn't tell you to go buy it, right? Ended up taking the camera, paying for it, and then selling it later for cheaper than what he's got it for. But it put into perspectives like how like for me, like my next partner, what I'm gonna make sure to make out of it.
Everything, like every experience like this teaches you a really valuable lesson of like what you don't want to have to put up with the next time.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is that the next time it happened was literally in that same year, maybe 5 months later, with another person who I thought would be a good manager, right? And when we did like first like actually come into business together, I told him explicitly, I've had a bad experience with someone else, and I told him, I don't want you, like I just want you to be my manager. I don't need you to be like my second shooter or whatnot, right? Same thing happened. Got involved into it and decided to like it and like buy his own camera, which he took full responsibility for, right? Even when we did do the split up. But there was one thing that I think that bothered me was where when it came to using the equipment for the wrong reasons. And what I mean is more of a personal reason, where he didn't buy his camera first, right? He ended up asking me if he can borrow my equipment. And I told him, is it for business or is it for like a personal thing? He's like, no, it's more of a personal thing. I'm like, no, I don't feel comfortable using it for that because it's meant for business reasons, right? And then when he bought his camera, and this is sort of the catalyst of when I went into Sony, because before that I was in Nikon, and we had a wedding gig that we were about to do, right? And he was more comfortable taking pictures while I was more comfortable doing video. And I told him, why don't we just switch our cameras for that night, right? And then the whole thing, like he kind of like flipped out. He was like, oh, now you're just using me and stuff. I'm like, no, I'm not using you. I literally said for that night, we just switched cameras. Like you still use my camera and I'm using your camera. But he's like, no, I feel like once I like bought this new camera, you just became a different person. What? It's for business. It's not for anything else.
And it was for that specific gig. That's what worked best. That's what was going to work best for that client.
Exactly. So like for that specific reason, I was like, you know what? If it's gonna get too personal, I'd rather out.
Yes.
And
once it gets too personal and people start to take things personally and get their feelings easily like misconstrued with your intentions, and it just gets very messy very quickly.
Absolutely. And and this is where like I differ with you, but not in completely, but at the same time, realistically, right? Yes, we're humans at the end of the day, but at the same time, we have a goal that in mind. Mm-hmm. So like, that's why like for us, like when we communicate, I'm understanding, but at the same time, there is certain things that we need to get done. And if it doesn't get done, then like it like, for example, like for that gig, we were supposed to, need to switch cameras so that I can take better video and he can take photos, which he wanted to just take photos. Right. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to get hurt about like, oh no, you're just using me. I'm like, no, I'm not using you. I'm giving you my camera. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Vice versa with like, what's it called? When people are given too many excuses, which I'm a victim of, and I'm not going to sit here saying like, I haven't done my share like excuses in the past, but like also too, like, I don't like giving too many excuses because it just makes it seem like I just have a excuse for everything. Mm-hmm. Kind of like what I said to the judge one time when they asked me why do I have so many tickets or speeding tickets. I'm like, I don't have an excuse for that. Mm-hmm. I just speed. She's like, good answer. And she gave me that freedom card. But mm-hmm. going back to the topic, it really depends who you go into business with.
It right? really does. I mean, it's so important because, so like going back to my really negative experience, and it was somebody that I had known for a long time, and you know, in her mind she was like, if I help you out on the creative / managerial side of things and like help set you up with shoots with other people and help you network with other people and like, you know, form opportunities together, that you can shoot for me for my modeling portfolio. And while that was all fun and games at first, it became something where it was like I was up till 5 a.m. sometimes editing photos for her portfolio. I was shooting her for free all the time, at least once a week, maybe even 2 or 3 times a week, shooting her for free, curating these creative shoots with her. And she would set up shoots with me and other people, which I appreciated. But at the end of the day, did I need that? No. I was doing that on my own before her, and I continued to do that on my own after her. She just took over that responsibility all on her own once she decided that she wanted to work with me. And, you know, in the end, it's so funny because you say like your first falling out with someone you had business with as a friend, like it ended in like sort of a blowout for no reason, right? Mm-hmm. A very simple problem. For me, it like got so personal that this person was trying to control every aspect of my life. So they were trying to control who I was hanging out with, who I was friends with. They were trying to control my romantic relationships. Ooh. And the day that I remember ever so specifically, the day that we stopped being friends was because I was having to, at the time, hide hanging out with my ex, my boyfriend at the time, from her because she didn't approve of him because apparently he distracted me. And that I wasn't putting enough effort into the business otherwise, and that I wasn't curating any shoots on my own otherwise. The huge reason why I wasn't curating anything on my own is because it became so much of a toxic thing for me, like that planning a shoot became really stressful and it became really anxiety inducing, and it became something that was not fun for me. It was not light. It wasn't, it didn't come naturally, and it felt very forced, and it felt very not under my control, and it was my business at the end of the day. So I felt like I was being taken advantage of. And it bled into every area of my life. It stressed me out in every aspect because I had this person telling me that I shouldn't be in the relationship that I was in, that I shouldn't be friends with the people that I was friends with, that they were not going to help me grow, that they were only going to distract me. It was a very toxic, manipulative situation where she was literally trying to control not only my business, but every aspect of my life. And it's crazy because I've never talked about this on camera, but it led me to literally have so many traumatic, like, mental health issues following. And so the day that we stopped being friends and had this huge blowout and stopped working together was because I told her that I couldn't hang out with her that day because I already had plans with my then boyfriend. And that, you know, his family had already made dinner and made a meal for us. And that I couldn't bail on them last minute like that. And we were on the phone during this. And she said, okay, that's fine. Half hour after we got off the phone, she texted me saying that I should just ditch him and come hang out with her and come drink with her and go out to dinner with her. And I clarified yet again that I couldn't bail on my then boyfriend and his parents. And she then proceeded to go ballistic on me in every single way and tell me that I was never going to be anything in this industry, that I was never going to amount to anything or succeed, and that I needed therapy, like all of these crazy, crazy notions, and just basically gaslighted the shit out of me into thinking that like I was the one who was the problem and like desperately needed help. And it took so long for me to realize that like that was not my fault and that like I can just take that and use that to fuel like what I don't want in a business partner / what I don't want in a friend either going forward. And I had never attempted to go into business with a friend at all after that. And it took about 2 years after, you know, being out of business with that person, for us to come up with the idea of possibly starting a podcast. I think we came up with this idea in like 2020 was when we first kind of like started talking about it at least.
2020, yeah.
And we didn't execute it for another year because of the fact that you were always traveling. You had such a busy schedule. And you were never in one place for a long time. There was no like stability in your...
Right.
You know.
Which is funny because 2020 was the year where everyone was secluded.
Right. Totally. But you were still doing it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, let's wait until your life calms down a little bit. Thinking in my head, like, this could happen, this could not happen. Let's not create too many unrealistic expectations. And then you came to me and you're like, I'm serious about it. Like, let's get serious. And you had a lot of things to teach me. And I think in a dynamic where like I am the person who's like being taught, it's a great environment for me. Like if I feel like it's easier than teaching somebody else myself. I feel like you were a good teacher in that way where it's like I didn't know a lot of what went into creating a podcast. And now we can kind of like, we have a groove going and we have a system and like I know how to do things. And, you know, like I feel like the dynamic is really great because you took the time to teach me these things. And it wasn't like an impatient thing, like you should know this already. Like it was just like, here, let's teach you.
No, it's actually funny, and I might go off topic a little bit, but I never thought I could be like a good teacher. Like I've always put in my head that like, because of, and you know this issue way too well, is that I'm really bad at communicating. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily that I don't want to communicate, is that I literally can't communicate properly with other people, right? And I always thought that was a bad quality of me, that like I can't teach other people up. The amount of time I've mentored someone, not saying that I've mentored you, but like the amount of time I've
have in a way.
In a way, but like not necessarily like actual mentorship where it's like,
right,
we have an understanding like you're my apprentice and right. I'm like,
but even before we started this podcast, you would bring me on to certain gigs, whether it be like a wedding gig that I've never done a wedding before, and you're like, in that way you are mentoring me because it's a new experience for me. You're kind of like showing me how to maneuver that experience and how to perform well, even though I already know like how to take photos. You know, you're teaching me how to do things in a new environment. And so even before we started the podcast, that was already happening, you know?
Right. And that's what it is about, like, having like a good like business partner that you can actually rely on, because there are things like for example, it's like having a coworker who like knows everything and just gets impatient on like, oh, like what you said exactly. You should know this already. You've done this before. Yeah, I've done it before, but I forgot it.
Right.
Just tell me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and then later on it'll click in, because like for most people, or for some people, it doesn't click on the first go or the second go or even the fifth go. It takes a while to really catch up, and like practice makes perfect. You just got to keep doing it. And that's where I think I realized the most out of it. And we spoke about this maybe a couple of days ago, is that if you want the job to be done the way you want it to be done, do it yourself.
Yeah.
But if you're going to get someone else to do it, don't expect it to be done like the way you want. I'm not saying properly, but done the way that you would want it, even if you explained it down to the T.
Yeah.
Because everyone has their own interpretation on how things are done. And that's what really makes a good like partner, is like realizing like what it is that like you can like be okay with, and then things that like, okay, no, this is too much. Let's stop and talk about this, because this is really like it's going to hinder the growth of the business itself. Now on the flippity side of doing things solo, it's funny because I've liked to do business solo, but I realized that it's a lot harder, not because of the lack of motivation, just because of the lack of like the manpower on it, you know?
Yes, absolutely. You can't, like, we wouldn't be able to do, I don't think either of us would be able to do this on our own. If it was like just us doing everything, like if it was just you doing everything or just me doing everything.
Right.
Because we've even experienced that in the past, where it's like the responsibilities are not even close to 50-50 on both sides, where, you know, one person feels like they're doing a lot more of the workload than the other person, and it gets really overwhelming because you realize how much you value and need the other person and their skill set and their respective responsibilities of what they can provide. And in terms of like communication, I mean, yes, we've had communication issues in the past, but like when I have you with me here present, and I'm like, now that you're here with me, can you teach me this thing? It's perfect, and it goes really well, and you are a really good teacher. So it's like about having that like face-to-face time to be able to learn the new thing that I need to learn, or the best way to, you know, do the things that we do for this podcast. Like if I have you physically here to help me figure it out, we're golden. But sometimes if I have to talk to you over the phone about it doesn't always get done. But that's something that we work on, and it's something that we understand, because like I just feel like you have to have a lot of respect for the person that you're working with to be able to make it work. If you don't have that respect for that person, then you are going to end up either blowing up on them, saying things that you will regret, that you don't mean, getting too like emotional and emotionally involved in it, and just not like seeing it for really how it is. I think that's just like a really important way to go about it, is just like have respect for you know, whoever you're working with. And if you find that someone you're working with can't have respect for you, then I think that's a sign that, you know, maybe you need to figure out another way.
It's beyond the signs, if you know what I mean.
Quite literally, it is.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I really don't have any much more to say. Like my verdict for like having starting a business with a friend or just going solo, I think it's understand, like, I guess for me, it's more or less like, and this is like my all or say none or whatever it's called. If you're going to go in business with a friend, make sure that like it's a friend that, one, you can trust. Not only that, one that you know will not get personal about certain things that need to be done and have to be done. And that's all I have to say.
Yeah. Yeah, as long as you respect each other and also respect the effort and time that that each person is putting into it. Like, I feel like that's what I mean when I say respect has everything to do with this, because if you respect the person you're working with, you don't want to let them down. You know, you want to be able to perform well, not only for you, but for them, to respect all the time and effort that they're also putting into it. And, you know, I think we're on our way and we're doing a really good job. And this is like the best like outcome that I've ever had in working with a friend. And so, you know, I'm really grateful that we can still, like, I think we said this in the behind the scenes episode, like, it's pretty dope that we can still be friends, you know? Like,
absolutely, even
we're
after
still
all.
Here.
But like, I mean, so far has been the best experience. The only experience I have that is still going is probably the business I have with my brother. But that's family, not friend.
Exactly.
So with that being said, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you like this episode a lot and would like to see future episodes, hit that subscribe button and the bell notification to know when we do actually post, as well as the social media proof, which is the Instagram, the Twitter, and the Facebook. But
hell yeah.
You ever tried going on business solo, like from the start?
I mean, the only thing I've done it with is ocean salts. I can't say I've ever started another business. So
True.
Actually, no. I was going to say I started another business, but it was with a friend. It was a skateboard business when I was in high school.
Isn't that the one that became Ocean Salts?
No, it was separate. Because it wasn't a photography thing. It was just I made skateboards and I sold them to people.
Not bad.
But anyway,
yeah,
I want to know what all of y'all think about starting a business with a friend. So leave a comment on what your perspective is. And yeah, I guess with that, we will see you guys in the next episode.
See you next time. But before that, video on Kiera's face, video on my face, and hold on for like 5 seconds so we can like linger there a bit. Just click that one.
There you go. Yep.
Click that one.
Click that one too, actually.
Or this one.
Yeah.
Or click both of them.
Yeah.
And just save them on each tab.
There you go.
And with that being said, thank you and have a good one.
See ya.